After 8-year-old Maddie Clifton seemingly vanishes into thin air, concerned community members of Jacksonville, Florida, band together in the hopes they'll track her down. Little did they know she was much closer than they were led to believe. Hello, everybody, and welcome to True Crime Banter, the podcast aimed at bringing you your dose of murder relaxation. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy the episode. Over there.
It's like a little cinnamon roll and it's all like curled up like that. Like a little cinnamon.
Is quite the
which I would know.
You would know. You would know. Maybe we can get in that story at some point in the future, but not this episode.
No, I didn't mean to bring that up.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the True Crime Banter podcast.
Yes.
My name is Riley.
Oh, we're doing intros.
We are.
Hi, I'm Christian.
In case they don't know,
Hi.
we run into situations where people don't know.
True.
That Riley's the dude in this podcast.
Yep.
So, hi. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm living life. I'm sipping on this champagne lemonade.
I was asking the listeners.
Oh.
That's awkward.
Well,
can we just
maybe
leave
they're
a moment of silence for them to
lemonade.
answer?
Yeah. Oh, you're doing good. Sorry to that guy who's not
Don't
doing
interrupt
good.
them.
Sorry,
Why are you interrupting them right
guys.
now?
Sorry.
Anyways, before we get into our bit of banter, I do want to let people know that I'm going to start leaving about a 15-second intro music clip as we lead into the actual case. Usually we try to keep this bit of banter within 10 minutes or so. If you guys want to just skip ahead to the case, hit that skip button a few times.
Yeah, we're trying to please
is.
both parties, I think.
Yeah, so we're going to have the bit of banter.
A big following that enjoy it, and then a even bigger following that does not. So.
I love the podcast, except for
Just
the banter
shut
part at
up.
the beginning. So,
Oops.
anyways, yes, you guys, as I'm like choking on my own saliva, is that what they call it?
Yeah, I hate that word.
Yeah, feel free to skip ahead if you need to, if you don't want to listen to the bit of banter. And
if you want to feel like you have friends, just let it keep playing.
Well, howdy. Yeah, howdy. Thanks for
Hi.
answering how you guys are doing today.
Yep.
I've got the case on deck for today. But I've also got the bit of banter on deck.
Yeah, you're
for today.
Double fisting it over here.
I told you, you are always like, I just don't know what to talk about for a bit of banter.
I'm so bad at it.
And then we have these conversations right before we're recording. We are literally talking to each other through the headphones, through the microphones. And I'm like, this is the perfect bit of banter. And you just choose to...
I don't see it as banter. I don't know.
Well,
I guess I see it like, what movie would you rather, like, what's the only movie you would take to a desert island or something? Yeah.
Right. But
versus, like, you won't believe what this old lady said to me at work. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, you be nice to that old lady at work, though. But what I was going to say is, I don't remember what I was going to say.
You were saying that I brought up something right
Yeah,
before
we talked about something.
Yeah.
I was like, it would have been a perfect bit of banter. Maybe next time or some other time. But I do have the bit of
organic.
banter. Yeah,
Go
super
ahead.
organic. Anyways, my bit of banter for today. This was a few years ago, but I just saw it come up on YouTube for me recently. And it is Palessi, the Palessi, which is like a high-end shoe retailer.
I didn't even know that.
No?
No.
Okay, well, neither did I.
You're talking about the song thing.
No.
That guy. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Bow.
Oh,
I thought that
no,
was him.
that is amazing, though. No, that's something completely different. The Street General, oh my goodness.
I thought his name was Plessy.
I
thought that's what you typed in when you showed me that video.
No.
Wait, I'm so confused.
This is something
Okay,
completely
tell me.
different. Anyways, Palessi,
Scratch
a
that, guys.
high-end shoe retailer that
Okay.
you would find in like, not like strip malls, but like I guess real malls where you would see like
So like
Coach
Macy's and Nordstrom's and stuff?
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, Palessi, and there was a news crew that covered this retail store. And the reason there was a news crew is because all these people, rushed to the grand opening of this high-end shoe retailer.
Is this recent?
3 years ago.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
I just saw it recently.
Yeah.
And they bought these like $400, $500 shoes, like $600 heels.
God.
And some of these shoes are like, no offense, like really ugly.
Oh yeah.
There was like
high-end fashion quote usually is not anything too great.
Yeah, usually it's people who just don't understand.
Well, and no offense, it's shit like that like Rihanna wears. That was just so unbelievably weird and distracting that only someone like that can pull it off.
Art.
Yeah, it's not normal people wearing it.
There was this pair of shoes that looked like old man sneakers, like New Balances, but they weren't even New Balance. They were just some random off-brand. And like super thick soles with like a weird.
How do you cheat the system on this? Like, how do you skip past all the ugly shoes and make the same ugly shoe, but make it so expensive? How do you do that?
Well, you put the price tag on it.
That doesn't. So Payless can just start doing this. People are gonna buy it. No.
Did you say Payless or Paylessy?
Payless.
Because
dumb. Wait.
That's what this news story is about. Because it was Payless.
Wait.
Who rebranded their store as Palessi.
Are you fucking
joking?
Put
Giant price tags on it. And people actually went in and started buying these shoes, exact same shoes that were from Payless, as this high-end Palessi.
You guys can't see me right now, but I'm speechless. My face is frozen.
So, the best part about it, too, is that the news crew, each person, they let them know, this is a Payless shoe.
They told each news crew that?
No. The news crew was there to tell the shoppers that actually spent this money on these high-end shoes that
they waited
this
till
was
after,
a $35 shoe.
Yeah.
And then they gave them their money back and let them keep the shoes just to show that high-end shoe retail is fucking bullshit.
What? Wait.
Look it up.
No, I believe you. This is just so dumb. Like, so this is all just to be like, to show people how dumb they are? So Payless is really just out here to just burn everyone? In the early
2010s, YouTube would call it a social experiment, where you do
stupid shit. Who knew Payless was so thought-provoking? Like, they have nothing better to do. All their shit's closed down now anyway, so...
True. But, yeah,
keep an eye out for any of those
other
cleverly renamed words.
Ooh.
Anything that even sounds like Payless.
Just
keep an eye out, guys.
Pay a little more.
We're not falling for this twice, okay?
That's right. So, yeah, I saw that and I was like,
once.
I like it. Shame on you. But a fooled man can't be fooled again. Anyways, yeah, wow. that was a bit of banter. I've been holding on to that for like 4 days now.
I need to take notes on like a good banter because I feel like I've heard of this stuff before.
I will show you
the
news crew coverage of this whole thing after the recording. But
it actually might be kind of nice to like have a clip of it even with our post on Instagram. Like a banter clip that coincides with our banter.
That's a great idea. If you guys think that's a good idea, leave a comment when we do that on this case.
We could even just have a separate small little clip on Instagram, like has something to do with the banter we talked about, and then another one's like the real post of the actual case. But
maybe we'll discuss that. We'll discuss that post recording or pre-posting.
Okay.
Pre-posting, post-recording, something like that.
Can't give away all of our secrets. So.
That's right. Secrets of the trade with Cry and Rye.
Let's just do it.
Let's just get into the case. How about that? This story begins on the evening of November 3rd, 1998. 8-year-old Maddie Clifton darts out the front door, eager to play with her neighborhood kids. Maddie's mother, Sheila, yells to Maddie, "Make sure you're back in time for dinner." But little did Sheila know that would be the last time she would see her youngest daughter. Right away, as I was researching this case, this brought me back to I would say, like a time of joy and innocence, I guess. Because Maddie, she was born in 1990, and that would make her like just over a year older than, I guess, both of us,
Yeah.
And so I know that experience, or your experience might be a little bit different than mine, but I have a lot of memories of like spending hours on end outside with like neighborhood kids.
Yeah, that's kind of what, when people not make fun of me, but when older people are like, oh, you're just young. And I'm like, no, I was born at a good time right on the edge where we still like ate Otter Pops and went on Razor scooters, but also like grew up with AOL and chat rooms.
Right,
right on the verge.
Best
I got the best of both, right?
Yeah, you got to experience, and we can remember life before the internet kind of took over.
Yep.
So like I put here, I remember setting up like a mini baseball field out front in like the street using frisbees as bases,
and having to go like check in with your mom and be like, hey, I'm still alive, and then going back inside.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was like if the lights turn on, that's when you need to be coming home pretty much.
Yeah.
Like
I didn't have any
street
lights on mine, but yeah.
Oh, well, sorry, I grew up in a fancy
it was hella poor, but it's fine.
Well,
it's fine.
It's cool. We won't go there.
It's fine.
But so anyway, I feel like because of the whole stranger danger like phenomena that kind of happened, and obviously the different outlets that kids have nowadays to reach out and be in contact with their friends.
Yeah.
Those kinds of activities and like memories don't really get made nearly as often.
Oh yeah. No.
Like I just don't. It makes us sound old, or makes me sound like an old person. I just don't see as many people outdoors.
Well, it's just sad because you just can't trust anyone anymore.
Right. Yeah.
You can't leave your kids unsupervised to go make those memories.
Yeah.
You can't leave them anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, for any of our listeners that were born, I would say probably before the 2000s, even if you were late 90s, while you're listening to this, try to put yourself back in that innocent mind of the child version of you, because it makes this case that much more haunting. So dinner time for the Cliftons came, and Maddie was nowhere to be found. Her oldest sister, Jessie, hadn't seen her at all, and as one would imagine in this situation, Sheila, her motherly instincts took over. And so she immediately dialed 911 and alerted the authorities of the missing 8-year-old, which I think could be considered like premature, but
I guess it
when you're a mom, I don't blame anybody for...
Yeah, especially if you know your kid, you know they're always here by this time or whatever. Yeah.
Now begins the search for Maddie Clifton. The first question to ask is, where was she last known to be at? And the answer to that is across the street at the Phillips household, home to Steve and Melissa Phillips and their 14-year-old son, Josh. Now, despite the 6-year age gap, Josh and Maddie were what I would call neighborhood best friends. So there wasn't a lot of kids around their age that lived nearby in the neighborhood. So the two of them were found spending a lot of time just hanging out together.
And how old was she again? I'm sorry.
She was 8. He was 14.
Yeah,
which is kind of... And so Maddie's older sister is 11. So it's kind of a 3-year age difference between the three of them.
Yeah, but when there's not that middle one around, that's really big difference.
Yeah, pretty big difference.
Like, especially between the different genders. Like, an 8-year-old girl and a 14-year-old boy, like, that's a really big...
Yeah.
She's playing with Barbies, and he's, like, looking at girls a different way now. You know?
I agree.
Like,
and
I don't know.
The...
puberty and shit.
Yeah, the Phillips family, they kind of felt like it would be nice if people Josh's age would move in. You know?
Oh, right.
I mean, you
he
can't
didn't really have options.
Yeah, you can't just be like, and especially back in the late 90s, you know, you didn't want your kids just sitting in front of a television playing video games.
True, and I guess if nothing weird's happened, then like whatever.
Yeah, and for the most part, I mean, everything seemed fine between the two. Okay. And is at this moment.
Yeah.
So in this instance, Josh and Maddie, they were last seen playing catch with a baseball in Josh's backyard. As Maddie's mom and sister break out the flashlights and recruit the help of their neighbors with the hopes of finding Maddie sooner, Josh Phillips steps outside and asks what's going on.
Okay.
When Maddie's mom and sister explain to Josh that Maddie never made it home for dinner, they proceed to ask if he had any idea or, I guess, a lead as to where Maddie might be. And, of course, he said no, she, left to go back home a while ago. And as you could probably guess, that's when panic levels turn up to 11. What could have happened to Maddie in the time it took to walk across the street?
I was going to say, and when you say across the street, you mean literally across the street. Okay, yep. Just making sure.
And then at this point, how far could she have gotten if someone had taken her?
Yeah, right.
Police, they didn't have a ton of leads. They spoke to Josh, as he was the last person to have knowingly seen Maddie alive. And as the cops conducted a search of the Phillips household, practically the entire neighborhood was banding together, screaming and calling out Maddie's name. The search continued on for 6 days and garnered national attention, including a spot on America's Most Wanted, which, as we've discussed before in previous episodes, like the John List case, which you covered, TV spots on these Most Wanted shows, whether it's Washington's Most Wanted, America's Most Wanted, they can help in solving like decade-old cold cases.
There's people that die to be on that show.
Yeah.
Whose like loved ones have been missing, and
they'll write in, every day, or I guess nowadays email in saying, hey, can you just put this on?
It's usually a matter of having enough information to put out there, is what I've kind of gathered.
Yeah, you can't just put anything out there not really knowing.
There's got to be kind of a backstory.
Details.
Yeah.
So in those 6 days following Maddie's disappearance, a number of things happened. There was a $50,000 reward put up for her finding. The FBI stepped in and offered their assistance in the search. But certainly the most intriguing thing to happen is that there was one name that happened to fall into the laps of investigators. And by happen to fall into the laps of investigators, I just mean that they actually did their due diligence.
Okay, good.
And looked into the surrounding households of the Clifton residents.
Okay.
And what they found was a gentleman who had twice been arrested for sexual assault just a decade prior to Maddie's disappearance.
Okay.
The police then visit that man, and something seems just a little bit off about him.
Yeah, it usually is.
Yeah,
it could be all the offending he's doing.
Well,
the
it
sexual
could be.
offending.
I'm not going to make any assumptions, but
this is obviously,
I think you're on
I don't want to say
something.
obviously, but this is before the time where they kept like a really big track of people that offended and
Right.
stuff. Like you
The
didn't have like
databases.
register and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So they bring him in for questioning and somehow convince him to take a polygraph test. And again, I feel like we mention it all the time. The test doesn't really ever do anything.
No.
Like we just don't advise it.
No.
Because if you pass the test, it doesn't prove that you're innocent.
How many times have we seen like Netflix specials and stuff, or like of these like cases where like people from the 70s, 80s, and 90s like these detectives and law enforcement people, and they're like, I knew he was guilty because it came back that he was being deceptive. And I'm like, how about he was just super nervous because you probably just beat the shit out of him in private 5 minutes before this.
Like, we're not going to talk about what we did to get him to take the test, but
I knew
he was quite deceitful, especially on question 7.
Okay.
So, again, and so if you pass the test, it doesn't really prove you're innocent, but if you fail it, it gives investigators every reason in the world to basically dig deep into your situation. And in this specific case, this mysterious neighbor took the polygraph test and failed miserably. And this is something we were watching a show just the other day. I don't remember what it was about, but it was like the Chris Watts.
The Chris Watts thing, yeah.
And the gal that administered that polygraph test on Chris Watts.
The FBI agent, yeah.
Yeah, she said there's like, if you're a -4, that's considered being deceitful.
Yeah.
And Chris Watts was like a -20 or something.
18. Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you measuring? What levels of deceitfulness,
Well, I mean, if you look on the graph area, right? I mean, there's numbers on
dips
it.
and valleys.
So I'm guessing they're probably, whatever dips below a certain line, they're probably adding that each time it goes down.
Right.
And seeing like, I don't know, I'm just guessing.
Yeah, I'm like, if you're lying, is it just like how big of a lie it is? You know,
probably on the questions, right? Like certain questions, maybe like how big of the dip is on the negative side for certain questions.
That's where I wonder is
like,
if it's a bigger lie,
right?
Does it actually dip lower to where you get to a negative 18,
Yeah.
or if it's just like, what's your middle name?
Just
And
get a
if you
lawyer,
give the wrong middle
just
name,
get
is
a
it only a
lawyer.
negative 2? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's where I'm
Right.
gonna like, how do you know how deceitful? Anyways, this guy, this neighbor, this sexual assault, he was never actually convicted of it, but he was arrested twice and attempted to be charged twice. And they never actually convicted of him.
Gotcha.
Convicted him. But anyway, he failed it miserably, which is great.
Yeah.
However, through further questioning and investigation, this man did have an alibi as to where he was the evening of Maddie's disappearance, and his alibi absolutely checked out.
Yeah, that's tricky. Because if, you already like are probably nervous
our guy.
because you're being, maybe you thought whatever happened, whether you're innocent or not, was probably put behind you.
Right.
And then now you're like potentially being framed or maybe going to be framed for something. Like I would be nervous too. This would be an
imagine
easy person to pin this on.
He was doing something else illegal, or maybe like he was being,
exactly. This is where you really have to make sure that like the police are doing their job and not just being like, oh, this guy would be a great person to pin this on.
And so this is the prime example of why a polygraph test.
But also making sure that you do the actual work of really making sure the alibi checks out.
Yeah.
Like, not just being like, oh, yeah, he had it, so we have to move on.
Right, yeah.
How many
if there's
times
cameras,
have
can you see cameras for...
been like, oh, he actually didn't have an alibi and we just didn't check it out.
Right.
This has happened many a time.
They're just like, oh, yeah, he said he was here, and we asked his work, and they said he was there.
Yeah, but
and then when they check the
punch
video,
card or
it's
whatever
like,
it is.
wait, he never showed up.
Wait a second.
Oh, awkward. So here we are, 6 days into the investigation. Police officers and neighbors alike doing whatever they can in hopes of tracking Maddie down. One promising lead that's already fallen through. Michelle Phillips is cleaning up around the house when she goes into Josh's room and notices quite a foul odor. Now, Josh's room was filled with incense and candles, which if anybody's been in like a small space with like multiple different scents or sources of scents like that, I could imagine it smells terrible.
I wonder if this is normal for him to have this amount of like foofy stuff in his room. He's a 14-year-old boy.
Right, yeah. And you know what? Who knows? If he's like, going into the age of like trying to impress girls, then,
true.
Maybe he wants anything and everything to smell good. So you just buy every candle in the world and light them all. And obviously, if you add in the fact that he's a 14-year-old boy living in his room, it probably just isn't going to smell good in general.
Right.
But even with all of that factored in, Michelle, she felt like it might have been something worse than just a mixture of smells.
Yeah.
You see, Josh, he actually slept on what looks to be maybe like a twin-sized waterbed.
Okay, and, retro.
Yeah. I put here, for those of you too young to know, water beds are exactly what they sound like. A bed filled with water. And I put here, imagine like a blow-up mattress, but instead of it being filled with air, it's filled with water.
Wow, love that.
Like, that's exactly, and I remember growing up, I thought they were like the coolest things ever.
Me too.
I was like,
remember.
This is amazing.
We all had a friend or a relative that had one.
Yeah. And you were like, what do I need to do to get this?
And not only did you like kind of jiggle and like float around and roll, but like it had a sound.
Yes,
like when you would move. Yeah.
Anyway.
That was good.
Thank you.
Actually,
I've been working on it. So the problem with waterbeds, though, similar to the same reason that a lot of apartment complexes don't allow you to have massive fish tanks, is that they pose the risk of leaking. And I could just imagine the amount of water damage that could be caused from a leaking waterbed.
Oh God, yeah, or if one just completely exploded.
Yeah, so I don't know if you measure the comfort and compare it to the amount of damage, if it's really worth the risk of doing that. And so here's Michelle wondering what this weird, awful smell is in Josh's room. And suspecting the fact that maybe there's like a leak in the waterbed. Maybe there's something rotting because of this water.
Yeah, that
like
makes
still
sense.
water.
Yeah, I could see that.
And we'll try to post a picture of Josh's bedroom because it's, I think, what you would think of every 14-year-old boy's room. Just an absolute fucking mess.
Yeah.
Like clothes everywhere, garbage on the ground. Basically what you get yelled at for constantly if you're not being
maybe
told
he
to
was
clean
hoping
up.
the candles and incense would make up for it.
Well, maybe so. I think we're onto something. So, Michelle, she steps forward into the center of the room. She bends down and inspects the backside of the waterbed, pushed up against the bedroom wall. Nothing.
Okay.
She moves towards the headboard of the waterbed, searching for any possible leak, or maybe just some food left somewhere to rot. And nothing. Now, let me ask you, and I think you probably already know, where would be the next place you search for a possible leak from the waterbed?
What did you already say? Behind the headboard and where?
I said behind the headboard and behind the bed, pushed up against the wall, so like the back side of the bed.
Well, actually under it.
Right.
Yeah.
And under it, she began to search. And before she could even lift the bed up, what did she see? The small foot of Maddie Clifton just barely sticking out from below. Michelle immediately left the room, ran outside the house, and across the street, she saw two things. First, police officers, still working on this case, trying to figure out where the hell Maddie is. And second is Maddie's family. A family still holding out hope that somewhere out there, Maddie's still alive and that they're going to find her and bring her home.
I feel like I would have just barfed.
Well, Michelle, she knew what she had to do.
Yeah.
And she pulled the officers to the side, led them across the street, and stood outside as the officers investigated the newfound crime scene.
Yeah, good thinking. Like, I would not want to be the one to, like, pull it out or anything to be like, I don't know. If she knew immediately, right? She's like, this could be no one else kind of thing.
Yeah, the pit in your stomach the moment you see that.
It's that quick math, right? Yeah. Fuck.
While all of this is happening, Josh is at school in the middle of one of his classes. And at the end of the school day, before Josh could even make it onto the bus to lead himself home, police were right there ready to arrest him. He was taken into custody and the interrogations began. So, quick little backstory on this situation. Josh claims that his dad, Steve, was an abusive alcoholic with the temper to match. And this will come into play as Josh begins to describe the events of this evening. So on the evening of Maddie's disappearance, Josh says that Maddie comes over and asks to play catch. And Josh, of course, says, sure, why not? During this game of catch, Maddie was accidentally hit in the face with the baseball. And this, of course, is not nearly enough force to kill Maddie in any way. However, I could imagine, especially when you factor in the strength difference of a 14-year-old boy and an 8-year-old little girl, like, even if you threw the baseball at my face, that's going to be painful.
Oh, yeah.
And so Josh, he explains that Maddie began screaming in pain. And here's where that little note about his father, Steve, comes in. Josh, at this moment in time, was home alone with Maddie. And the house rules were that no friends were to be over without a parent home. So Josh, already knowing that he wasn't supposed to have Maddie in the backyard, began to fear the consequences he would face, knowing that he not only had her over, but also ended up injuring her. So as Maddie lay on the ground, screaming and crying, Josh attempts to pick her up and ends up just dragging her into his bedroom. In his bedroom, he attempts to get her to stop screaming. First, via strangulation with the telephone cord. And when that didn't work, he grabbed his baseball bat and started beating her in the head. He then shoved her under his bed, seemingly just in time before his dad got home. After a short conversation with his dad, Josh feared that Maddie could still be heard, and her nearly lifeless body clung on to survival, involuntarily moaning in pain. So Josh did the only thing that made sense, and he did pull Maddie out from under his bed, grabbed his pocket knife, and stabbed Maddie over 10 times to her chest.
Dear God.
With the addition of cutting her throat as well. Josh then continued for nearly a week straight to sleep above the dead body of his missing neighbor. He went to school each day as if nothing was wrong, and the only reports from people around him in those 6 days is that he seemed a little bit quieter than normal. And his mom, Michelle, she says she could just chalk that up to the fact that one of his friends is missing. Now, when Maddie was found, she was found with her clothes partially removed. However, after inspection, there was no signs of any sexual assault that took place. Josh claims that the clothes fell off in the dragging process of moving Maddie from the backyard to his room.
Okay.
Though investigators say the evidence says otherwise.
Okay.
So there's not conflicting reports.
But not confirmed either.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so that's something that's kind of up in question. Now, there's also reports that just a half hour before he hung out with Maddie, Josh's internet history, and I thought for a second, I was like, internet history? And this is the late 90s, so there was internet access.
Oh, it's the late 90s? Why did I think this was 89?
99. Well, 1998, actually.
Oh, weird. I'm so sorry. I thought you said this was the late 80s before. I'm so sorry. I thought you said 89 at the beginning of this. Sorry.
She was born in 1990, so maybe that.
Oh,
anyways.
maybe that's what it was. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry
So there
okay.
there is the internet.
So yeah. Okay.
And I guess there is an internet history.
Yeah.
So like I was saying, there's reports that just a half hour before he was hanging out with Maddie, Josh's internet history was showing that he was watching violent pornography that, quote unquote, involved minors.
Okay,
so maybe
this
portrayed
does not
minors.
help at all. Okay.
No. And even worse, that he then revisited the same website later that same night, even after she had been murdered. Now, I wasn't able to find a ton of information supporting this, but there was multiple sources that brought this up. So I would like to hope it's not somebody just adding info to spice up a story like this.
Right.
I would think that, I mean, this is just,
I know.
I would like to be positive.
Would hope. Yeah.
But again, I couldn't confirm it, also couldn't deny it.
Yeah.
So the trial for Josh Phillips began on July 6th of 1999. It lasted 2 days, and it took only 2 hours for the jury to find him guilty of murder. But here is where things are interesting in this case, and where even after the national attention that it received from Maddie's initial disappearance, the trial itself seemed to garner just as much attention.
Because he's a minor?
Correct.
Yeah.
And although Josh was only 14 years old, just prior to the murder, the state of Florida changed their laws, allowing minors to be charged as adults in the case of murder sentences.
Interesting.
And not only that, they were able to charge him, and they convicted him, to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Wow.
Now, because he was a minor, they could not pursue the death penalty.
Yeah.
And prosecutors say they would have if he was an adult.
Okay.
But that is where
right.
he could get life without parole, but
Florida
not be
don't
charged.
play, man.
No.
Florida and Texas.
Now, since this sentencing, though, the federal government made it illegal to charge a minor, or I guess sentence a minor to life without parole. Okay. You have to give them the possibility of parole.
Okay.
Which opened up a number of resentencing dates for Josh. And it took years on years of it getting pushed back and rescheduled and pushed back. But in November of 2017...
Wow.
Josh.
A really long time.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so 18 years later. Josh had his first resentencing trial. I guess you would call it that.
He would have been 30-something, right?
Yep.
32?
35, I think. 34.
14 plus 18? 34?
Yeah, 33, 34. Something like that.
32.
Anyways.
Anyway.
He was not granted parole.
Oh.
So he is still in prison, but he does have another resentencing date scheduled for 2023, where he obviously is hoping to show that he's learned a lesson. And
I mean, hopefully they're doing some kind of like therapy,
rehabilitation.
Dear God, through all this, they're just like hoping he turns out okay.
He finished his high school learning and got his GED in prison, and
great.
He's helping teach things. And
awesome. Hopefully they have him on meds or a psychiatrist. Like, I don't give a fuck if you graduated high school. I hope you're talking to someone about demons in your life.
Right. And so that is where, even now, I mean, especially as we're a year away from his next resentencing, is how do you, obviously we're not paid to judge. We're not judges.
I do it for free all the time. Yeah.
How would you approach this case? Like, if he shows not good behavior, but maybe rehabilitation, if he's shown that he's grown, I mean, because he went from being a 14-year-old, he's now 38 years old.
Yeah.
And so in those 24 years, if he's shown, I mean, that's where it's so difficult, because you can't take a 14-year-old and what they've done, because obviously an adult is going to show growth. In 24 years, you're going to show growth, and whether it's believable or true or not, you're going to show the ability to show that you've grown, or gain the ability to be like, I realize. And even in his first resentencing back in 2017, he, for the first time publicly, I guess, apologized to the family.
Yeah.
He wrote, a letter to them and showed emotion, and that he was resentful for what he did, and he values life. And so it's a tough case, I feel like, to be like, okay, he's one of the people that has rehabilitated and should be let out into the public. Even on parole, should you let him out into the public again?
This is a big question for not knowing how much therapy he's had this whole time.
Right.
Just like you said, at this age in his life, he's going to show some kind of quote-unquote growth. I don't know what you're labeling that as. I don't know what I would label that as. I don't know what that means. Mm-hmm. If you're talking about that he has gotten taller and he knows how to get himself ready for bed every night, and he knows that you can't kill people, that's against the law. These are all very basic things that you would learn in or out of prison as a grown-up. You don't get points for that. That's just something that happens when you get older. You just happen to be growing old in prison. Yeah. You're just learning these exact same things that a 14-year-old would learn from ages 14 to 30-something, however old he is, in prison. I would like to know if you actually know what you've done and if you've been treated for it. I don't know if he has. If you're waiting to do this now in his 30s, keep him in there.
And that's where the difficulty...
If he's been getting treatment this whole time, okay. But you need to keep tabs on this motherfucker. Obviously, he has to register, everything.
Yeah, and he's going to have a parole officer, and I'll have to check into. And maybe he will have to have, weekly...
check-ins and stuff,
Not just check-ins, but... wow, I'm just blanking. You were just talking about... therapy. Weekly therapy sessions.
Yeah.
As to, showing that he's...
of your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so if there's any red flags that pop up in therapy, they can alert his PO and say, hey, we should probably reevaluate him, But that's the thing is, I'm 100% on board with that. And yet you still have the people that show growth in that sense that then re-kill or re-offend.
Right.
And that is, obviously the challenge of...
I don't think you have a lot of people that are in therapy from age 14 to 30-something that then go and kill people.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think
that's
it's definitely possible.
Yeah, and that is where you don't get a lot of cases like this, so you don't really have the data to back up either way.
Yeah.
And I think that's why this case still has some questions to it.
Yeah, it's all these motherfuckers that keep getting let out after, like, they get sentenced to 20 years, they get out in 4 years because they just didn't stab anybody in prison
kill somebody
for those 4
again.
years. Yeah, they just keep doing it.
Or do the same shit. Yeah.
I think you really got to look, too, at, like, what is the validity of the whole dad thing?
Right.
Was his dad actually abusive?
So there was a lot of questions about that. Did he really do this out of
fear? But then what's the porn thing about? Why
That's
are you
where
looking
I
that
said
up at 14 years old?
It is only Josh's report that his dad was an abusive alcoholic.
Right.
Michelle, his mom, does explain that, yeah, he was abrasive, and maybe demanded a lot, but he wasn't the abusive father that Josh is trying to point him out to be. And unfortunately, I mean, there's reports that say and Michelle, chose to stay married to him after all of this, which even if he's an abusive person, she probably is gonna, especially back in that day.
Yeah, that doesn't mean much to me.
But not even like a year or so after he got convicted, his dad died in like a car accident.
Oh God.
So you can't really look at,
Yeah. Also, too, when they're saying that there was pornography that was looked up and stuff, this was on whose computer?
His computer.
Josh?
Or I guess the home computer.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how do we know who was looking that up, too? Like,
yeah, and I wouldn't want to read, like I said, because I wasn't able to fully find supporting evidence. I don't want to read too much into the pornography. But...
Well, you got to read a little bit into it.
Yeah,
it's very specific.
Yeah.
And the timing around the actual murder and the fact that it, like, kind of pertains to the victim type.
Yep.
Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
That's weird to me. Anyway.
No, I agree. It's just one of those things where if I couldn't fully validate it, I don't want to give it too much. But it's something, if you want to look into it more, if any listeners have more info about it, then yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But... yeah, I mean, this is and you knew as soon as, right before I even started talking about the case, you knew exactly what the case was.
Yeah.
Because this is one that, I don't know, it'll stick with you. A lot of people say the body under the waterbed case or something like that.
That's how I remembered it.
Which, very memorable. But I just find, now that we're 20 years past it, that... the cases or the sentencing itself, how do you give justice to someone who did this? But also it was a 14-year-old boy who, it's just so hard to judge.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I was like, I hope he's been getting therapy this whole time. You can't just stick a kid.
Yeah. And then you add in the fact that he was very nonchalant about it all.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Yeah. And this isn't like a whole, like, this kid is stealing cars in the neighborhood and shit. Like,
no, just
this is so far beyond that.
Now, I will say, doctors, they did a brain scan of him and they noticed like abrasions on his frontal lobe.
Okay.
Which I guess, helps your decision making in modes of panic or stressful situations, which, if...
Is this the fight or flight part of the brain?
It sounds like it. Okay. Yeah. Like, what do you decide to do?
Prefrontal cortex.
Yeah. And what, if he did have issues with his, mentally. Yeah. And that's where it's like, if that's something on the inside and he can't control that, then do you risk,
Then at that point...
as much as in control as he wants to be, you don't know what he's going to be like if he's ever put in another situation like that. So.
Exactly. And that's also...
Do you risk it?
He was just the ticking time bomb at that point, whether it's her or not.
Yep. And in my eyes would still be a ticking time bomb.
Also, too, I mean, I would bet anything if we really, really, really went deep in this, and if we could somehow go back in time and interview people, he had some other signs before this.
Signs, yeah.
Whether he was hurting like little cats or something around the neighborhood or something.
Well, that's the thing that people they looked into that. He was never abusive towards animals, but you're right.
Yeah, if this kid's got unsupervised time and his parents aren't home, you don't think he's out in the woods.
What he's doing, yeah.
Yeah, you just don't know. I mean, freaking Jeffrey Dahmer's cutting off cats' heads and putting on sticks and shit.
True.
You don't know. Anyway,
that's it. That's 8. Oh. That's it. That is the case of Maddie Clifton.
Yeah, not the only reason, but a big reason I remember that one. Some of them stick around in my brain and some of them don't, but I remember hearing it a few different times, not a lot, so I'm actually glad you covered it because I don't remember too many people covering this one, but the part that stuck with me was the mom going under the bed. There were some other places that it said that she went under there and she actually grabbed the foot thinking it was a pair of dirty socks and she felt that it was solid and she like freaked out and ran downstairs, of course, and I'm calling the husband and like I just remember it's you can tell it different ways, but I remember like that part really stuck with me that she grabbed a kid's foot.
We will when we post this on Instagram, there's going to be a definite graphic warning because there is more recently images of the crime scene where you can see the foot sticking out.
Oh, weird. I didn't know that.
Weird. Yeah, it is very weird to see.
Yeah.
It's not graphic in the sense that like...
well, yeah, it's a foot. But it's still a dead person's foot.
Yes,
or dead kid's foot. Yeah.
So,
damn.
And to make things worse, if it could get worse, like they showed her hand, not showed her hand. They said that her hand, there was evidence of like claw marks.
Yeah.
Or her clenching onto the bedpost, showing that she was still alive at some point while being under the bed. So. Damn. Yep. Wow. I don't want to say, I mean, obviously, fuck you, Josh, for doing it. Yeah, it's weird. You can't be like, you're a piece of shit, but...
yeah, hopefully got help.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Damn.
But yeah, that's the case. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, once again, for the 1,000th time...
you're welcome.
Feels weird to say thank you for this,
but thanks welcome.
Thank you. You know what I'm going to say is thank you for telling a story. That's what I'm going to say. Thanks for telling me
That's what I'm here today. For your dose of murder relaxation.
Yeah, I don't know if that one was very relaxing, but yes. Anything involving kids, but yeah.
True. Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
Anyways, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope everybody else who is listening enjoyed it. If you did, go on to Spotify and leave a rating and Apple Podcasts, ratings, reviews, Instagrams,
Yeah,
follow,
also let
likes,
us know.
Talk to us. Please. We're desperate.
Please. Let us know, too, if there's any other funky things you've heard of, kind of like the Palesi.
Oh, yes.
If there's any other, like, weird social experiments that you've heard of.
Yeah, there has to be.
But you know what? You bring them to us, because I don't want to go look it up, so.
I'll find them.
Just bring them to me.
I will bring them to you. For you. Anyways, okay, that's it. Thank you guys for listening, joining, and...
catch you on the flippity flip.
Adios.